Right now, Russia is erupting. Bashkortostan has risen up against Putin. The underground is already striking at the Kremlin. Bashkirs are fighting for Ukraine, the beginning of the end. And for the Kremlin, the special forces of GUR are also hitting the occupier's ship right in the enemy's lair. Putin is in a panic and Europe is slamming its borders shut. Lukashenko has done the unthinkable. He's preparing a nuclear surprise. The clock is ticking. Finland is urgently convening its parliament. The Kremlin is talking about an invasion. NATO is on the brink of war with Russia. The Iron Army of the Ukrainian armed forces, robots are already at the front, going into hell where no human would dare and saving our soldiers. Russia is losing its mind as their soldiers are being driven to slaughter like cattle. America is on the verge of revolt, a series of brutal murders. Meanwhile, the Kremlin is attacking Poland. Why did Putin set Europe on fire? Warsaw sounds the alarm. Russia is breaking through the defenses of Poland and NATO. This is no accident. It's the beginning of the Kremlin's plan. The outcome could shake the world. More on all this in our broadcast. Hotspot. Here we go. Russia is exploding from within. Bashkortostan is rising up in rebellion. Putin's regime is coming apart at the seams. Local residents are openly challenging the Kremlin, and the Bashkirs are not just resisting. They've taken Ukraine's side, fighting the Russian occupiers with weapons in hand. This is it, the real uprising against Moscow. All the details coming up. Meanwhile,
as the Russian regime intensifies its repressions and clamps down on any sign of civil protest, activists are finding new ways to fight back. Some are fighting on the front lines as part of the Ukrainian armed forces, while others are carrying out dangerous work behind enemy lines, where every act of sabotage and resistance strikes a blow against Putin's system.
The peculiarity of this underground movement is that we only learn about their activities when some action actually takes place.
Since the start of the full-scale war, the number of people willing to openly oppose the regime has been steadily growing. These are people with different political views and ethnic backgrounds. Russians, Belarusians, Georgians, Armenians, Chechens, Bashkirs, and many others. United by a single goal, the overthrow of the Putin regime.
Somewhere, they succeed. Elsewhere, stop the system less successful.
Russian news feeds are increasingly reporting arson attacks on military enlistment offices, sabotage of railway lines, damage to military infrastructure, and other acts of resistance. Little is known about the partisans. Some say they are actively supported by Russian volunteers. Others believe this movement is autonomous and isolated within Russia.
There are a lot of them, yes, and for the most part they are quite atomized. And that's understandable primarily because of the severe repression happening now. Among the most well-known groups, a few can be mentioned. There is a group called Skrepok, which claimed responsibility for the explosion at the FSB building in Rostov-on-Don. And in general, they initially began their activities in southern Russia, so they carried out many actions there.
Among those known to the general public is the group BOK, the combat organization of anarcho-communists. They are responsible for many acts of sabotage on the railways, the so-called rail war.
There is also a fairly well-known leader of a movement that has been recognized as either terrorist or extremist. It's all mixed up in Russia now. Art Podgotovka, Vyacheslav Maltsev. He also claims that he has many devoted partisans, and, for example, there is a very notable and significant incident, though there is very little concrete information about it, the mysterious explosion at Detsky Mir, which occurred quite close to the prominent FSB building on Lubyanka, in which a well-known and high-ranking FSB officer was seriously injured. But the precise details surrounding this particular explosion are also largely unknown and remain unclear. The authorities started telling us that it was a helium tank explosion, which of course cannot possibly explain either the destruction or the number of dead and injured.
Special attention should be paid to the movement in Bashkortostan, the Bashkir Resistance Committee.
Here, the unfolding story is considerably more complex and intricate. There are documented actions involving deliberate acts of arson and destructive explosions targeting various organizations, including governmental institutions and private entities. Concurrently, widespread and fervent mass protests have also dramatically flared up across the Republic, drawing significant public attention and participation. For these tumultuous events, the Russian authorities have explicitly and publicly attributed blame to this very specific and controversial committee, holding them responsible for the unrest and violence.
We must also note the activities of the volunteers from the Bashkort company, who are fighting for Ukraine while simultaneously building up an underground movement in their home republic, which is actively expanding. In addition to the capital of the republic, Ufa, the fighters are sending their agents to the regions. There, local residents paint the unit's symbol, a letter that combines R and B, which stands for the Bashkort company. In the city of Belebey, there are especially many of these symbols now. In this way, residents express their support and solidarity with the struggle for the freedom of Bashkortostan. Activists are warning the pro-Russian authorities that they are closer than it may seem and are urging local residents to be vigilant and cautious. According to the fighters of the company, more and more Bashkirs are ready to stand together as one to defend their native region, supporting the resistance movement within the country.
The underground is growing. The underground is growing. Another thing is, as I already said in response to the previous question, this activity does not imply any publicity. We see it clearly. We know this work. And by and large, the significant incidents that frequently occur within the vast Russian Federation do not typically happen without the direct involvement of those individuals who are actively operating underground. Yes, and they are fighting against Putin's government, against Putin's regime.
And this is only the small part of the resistance that is known. Despite the repressive system and constant surveillance, the activity of dissenters continues to grow. Even under the harshest conditions inside Russia, new centers of resistance are emerging, and often the number of people ready to act against the regime is increasing.
A sensation right in the enemy's lair. Special forces have crushed the Russian fleet. These images drove Putin into a frenzy. Meanwhile, Europe is on edge. Poland has completely closed its border with Belarus, Latvia is blocking its airspace, and this is just the beginning. And that's not all. Lukashenko is secretly building a giant base. You'll be shocked when you find out what Belarus plans to launch from there. All the details coming up next.
A precise strike blew the occupiers apart. Ukraine's main intelligence directorate destroyed a Russian Black Sea Fleet ship near Novorossiysk. The armed forces struck a ship that the Russians had put into service in 2015. Its value is about $60 million. There are only 4 such vessels in Russia, now there are 3 left. Agents from the AT movement also played pranks at the air defense plant in Tula and destroyed a communications tower. Meanwhile, in Belarus, a secret military base is being built. Construction work in the south of the country is now in full swing. The construction area is about the size of 280 football fields. Russian media report that a Russian Oreshnik missile complex may be stationed here.
The appearance of this information can be interpreted as part of information and psychological operations. What is confirmed is that indeed on the territory of the Republic of Belarus, at the Materny Tirona, the Volnaya base near Osipovichi, the 465th Missile Brigade is stationed. It should be noted that 3 new hangars have indeed been built there, housing Iskandari complexes.
And while Lukashenko secretly carries out Putin's orders, Poland is completely closing its border with Belarus from the night of September 11th to 12th, including railway crossings. The official reason for this step in the country is the Russian-Belarusian military exercises that begin on Friday. But in reality, of course, it's about those very drones that were flying toward Poland, including from Belarusian territory.
Therefore, such a preventive action by the Polish side is a response to possible provocations from the Russian Federation.
Then yes, Poland continues to count Kremlin drones. Let us recall that about 15 Russian UAV wreckages have been found on the country's territory. One of the drones crashed on the territory of a military base, and Putin's Geran drones were equipped with additional fuel tanks, which allowed these UAVs to cover a distance of more than 700 kilometers. And here's what's important to note. The drones that entered Poland weren't just flying anywhere, but were heading toward the base in Tovzheshov. I wonder if after this, the alliance will continue to just express concern for a long time. Regarding
the extra fuel tanks, I don't rule out that this is actually an element of a planned provocation by the Russian side. The technical specifications of the Geran range up to 450 kilometers. The primary version currently being actively promoted by the Russian side is that these gerunds were effectively suppressed by Ukraine's sophisticated electronic warfare and advanced air defense systems, which consequently caused them to significantly change their intended course. And as a direct consequence, after deviating from their original flight path, they inadvertently violated the sovereign Polish airspace. Let me emphasize again, most of the gerunds were launched directly from the territory of the Republic of Belarus.
In turn, the German Chancellor stated that this drone incident demonstrated the need for a significant reform of the alliance's air defense in Europe.
During the counteraction against the UAVs, F-35s were scrambled and used missiles to destroy the gerunds, which cost $10,000 each. The missiles themselves cost about $1.5 million. This accordingly indicates their readiness to repel large-scale attacks, whether from the Russian Federation or the Republic of Belarus, from the territory of these countries using aerodynamic means of destruction.
Meanwhile, Russia continues to use the territory of Crimea for its military logistics. From the very first days of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, it has been transferring its troops to the southern front, Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions, using the Kerch Bridge for this purpose.
But the Russian Federation fully understands the key importance of Crimea. This is accordingly the infrastructure of military bases and also accordingly serves as a springboard for further pressure on mainland Ukraine. That is why the main objective of the Russian Federation is to hold on to the peninsula by military means.
And to fight the occupiers, the United Kingdom and Ukraine are launching local production of interceptor drones, which will be effective in destroying Russian Shaheds and other strike UAVs.
Finland is ready to strike Russia. The country's prime minister gathered all parliamentary leaders for an emergency meeting. But here's the main thing, the Kremlin is already in a frenzy. They're shouting that Finland is preparing for an invasion. The countdown is in days. This could become the point of no return. Could NATO really enter the fight soon? All the shocking details coming up next.
New threats and accusations. The Russian dictator is preparing for yet another war.
Russia has always achieved significant and lasting results and has consistently emerged victorious from even the most difficult and challenging trials and tribulations.
Well, not always exactly, but let's not recall the achievements of the great Russian army right now. In the past few days, Putin's lackeys have been making statements about a possible war. The former ALCA president Dmitry Medvedev has decided that Finland is preparing to attack Russia.
After joining NATO under the guise of defensive measures, Helsinki is pursuing a confrontational course, preparing for war with Russia. It looks like a ready-made staging ground for an attack on us.
Moreover, according to him, Russia supposedly legally deserves reparations from the Finns for World War II. Supposedly at the time they paid too little thanks to the goodwill of the Russians.
More delusional ramblings from the Kremlin drunkard Medvedev, who likes to reinterpret history, just as Russia in general likes to rewrite it. If we talk specifically about any reparations, there were numerous consultations between Soviet Russia and Finland after World War II, during which the very term Finlandization emerged. In this arrangement, the Soviet Union did not demand any territorial concessions or reparations from Finland, and in return received a promise that Finland would not join NATO. But obviously the situation has changed over time.
Following the alcoholic Medvedev, the chairman of the State Duma Defense Committee, Andrei Kartapolov, also made aggressive statements. According to him, Helsinki's actions are allegedly extremely irresponsible, and the country's leadership is turning Finland into a hotbed of fascism.
I am very truly sorry that these particular people who have been through so very much truly do not deserve the unfortunate fate and the difficult situation in which
Kartapolov also stated, or rather threatened, that Russia is ready to defend itself at any moment since they have everything they need. Medvedev had previously said the same thing.
We absolutely cannot ignore the significant fact that Finland is now a fully fledged member of the North Atlantic Treaty Alliance. This crucial development fundamentally predetermines substantial changes in our military approaches to border arrangements and to effectively countering any possible unfriendly acts or potential threats.
If we recall the well-known phrase often attributed to Churchill that the fascists of the future will call themselves anti-fascists, then Russians are vividly highlighting the current ideology of their state by running around accusing everyone left and right of allegedly supporting Nazi or fascist ideas. Of course, there are no concrete facts behind these accusations, but this kind of hybrid psychological aggression against Finland, against Poland, against the Baltic countries is yet another confirmation of the long-term plans of the Russian Federation. They have absolutely no intention of stopping at Ukraine, and a significant portion of Putin's overarching plan is truly about restoring the former Soviet Union's considerable influence over Eastern and Northeastern Europe.
These statements show that Moscow is sharply escalating its aggressive rhetoric against Finland, the new NATO country, and all accusations directed at it are a continuation of the Kremlin's well-known tactics, attributing aggressive intentions to their neighbors, thereby justifying their own militarization.
If the Finns do not respond proactively to various kinds of provocations, if the Finns let Russian hybrid attacks slide, whether informational, psychological, or otherwise, or if in the future Finland faces cases similar to what we are seeing today with Poland, namely the incursion of a large number of drones, which can only be described as a deliberate plan, then Russia will not hesitate to attempt concrete physical operations on the ground in order to seize Finnish territory.
Russia has long been building up its strength along the Finnish border, constructing new tents and shelters for fighter jets from storage. In this way, the Kremlin is gradually preparing the ground for exerting pressure on Finland.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Shock, that's the real revolution. The Ukrainian army has deployed robots into battle. They're already operating on the front lines, going where humans can't survive and saving the lives of our soldiers. Ground drones are turning into a secret weapon in the armed forces. Meanwhile, the Russians are green with envy as their commanders throw soldiers into battle like cannon fodder. This is a new era of warfare. How are these iron assistants breaking the front and changing the rules of the game? Watch right now.
Combat, logistics, evacuation, engineering, reconnaissance. This is not a complete list of the types of ground robotic systems, or GRS. In the fourth year of the war, it's hard to imagine how Ukraine could successfully resist Russia without these machines. Previously, GRS were ineffective, but now they are truly saving the lives of Ukrainian soldiers.
You can fight for a long time, you can fight in different ways, but life, unfortunately, is very fragile and incredibly valuable. And in order not to pay a high price in the war against the enemy, we try to use drones. It's cheaper than fighting with people.
The main goal is to use GRS. It's about preserving human life. Right now, on the front line in the gray zone, moving infantry is almost 100% suicide, since this is the territory of FPV drones, which can wait for a target for days in sleep mode. GRS are doing an excellent job delivering ammunition and supplies.
Tasks are carried out logistically with evacuation operations. This includes delivering supplies. We work on supply delivery positions and evacuate the wounded. With the help of these robots, we save the lives of servicemen. Even if one hits a mine, we only lose metal, not a person. They perform extremely well, 100%.
One example of a logistics UGV, the Lynx, can transport up to 200 kilograms of cargo, for instance, evacuate 2 wounded soldiers. It operates at a range of 20 kilometers, meaning it can deliver or pick up cargo 10 kilometers away and return to the operator. This ground drone is capable of incredible feats and works in tandem with an aerial drone, which serves as the Lynx's eyes.
It hit a mine and lost 3 wheels. On a single wheel, it still delivered supplies to the position without any issues, so it really proved itself in this work.
Currently, 47% of all UGV missions are for logistics and evacuation tasks. About 25% are for engineering and demining, roughly 12% for combat, and the rest for special missions. Lynx, Targan, Termite, this is far from a complete list of UGVs used on the front line. Right now, Ukraine has many specialists in this sector and is a world leader in UGV production, since UGVs are immediately tested on the battlefield and all shortcomings are quickly addressed.
The speed and ingenuity of Ukrainian engineers is impressive. Many teams quickly adapt to the needs of the front, and while some solutions are still in the early stages, others are already showing significant potential for integration into more complex architectures. Ukraine has already established itself as a key player in combat robotics. Nikita Makushin, head of Milrem Robotics.
In just the first quarter of 2025, the Defense Procurement Agency purchased more than 8,000 robots. In total, the state plans to order 15,000 Ukrainian-engineered robots this year, which is 15 times more than last year. Reducing personnel losses and accomplishing combat missions, these are tasks that Ukrainian engineers excel at.
America is one step away from chaos. Shock, a friend of Trump, was brutally murdered practically live on air. And before that, there was the brutal murder of a Ukrainian woman, a broadcast of horror. America is shocked and Trump is demanding the death penalty. What are the authorities hiding and why could this murder become a point of no return? Meanwhile, the West is in the Kremlin's crosshairs. It has become known why Putin actually targeted Poland. On the eve of a crucial visit, this will surprise you. Stay tuned.
A murder broadcast live before a million-strong audience. A well-known podcaster, Trump supporter, and provocateur. Charlie Kirk was shot on the evening of September 10th during his speech at a university. As for Donald Trump, he personally recorded an entire 4-minute video expressing in great detail how very much he truly loved and deeply admired Charlie Kirk.
Such rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism we are witnessing in our country today, and it must stop immediately. My administration will find everyone involved in this atrocity and any other political violence.
Meanwhile, Republicans are already using Charlie Kirk's death for their own purposes. The White House published a photo with the caption "Democrats for Crime." But what does that mean?
First and foremost, we must not forget who is currently in charge at the White House. And Trump in general is known for his radical approach to witch hunts. And in fact, not only Trump, but also Musk, with whom they had a falling out. It's obvious that they will try to pin this murder on the democratic forces, on representatives of the woke movement. And in general, this whole story doesn't come as much of a surprise.
Meanwhile, Poland still hasn't recovered from the unexpected guests on the night of September 10th, when Russian drones deliberately entered its territory. Putin's goal, of course, is to blackmail the West and test the waters. But there is something even more dangerous: Russian propaganda.
Part of Polish society is actually blaming not Moscow for this incident, but Ukraine, which supposedly failed to shoot down the drones that flew over their country. And after that, the Russian Federation became very active, using its influencers and opinion leaders to promote the narrative that supposedly Zelensky, together with Tusk, started sending drones to Poland in order to allegedly provoke negativity and a conflict with the Russian Federation. But obviously, this is utter nonsense. It's just Russia trying to create an alternative reality.
Now that's some news. A bill has been introduced in the US Congress that would end all trade between Washington and Moscow. But it's hard to believe that Trump would agree to this.
It looks much more like pure populism and just a symbolic political move, rather than a substantive policy change. If you look at the figures for bilateral trade between Washington and Moscow, they're at a negligible level. Therefore, such a significant decision would not have any substantial real economic effect on the Russian economy. Here, it's more about profound political symbolism and clearly emphasizing Washington's firm and unwavering stance toward the Russian Federation, demonstrating a strong and unified position.
The president of Ukraine also commented on the West's weak response to the incident with Russian drones, offering his country's assistance.
Unfortunately, as of today, Russia has not received a strong response from global leaders to what the Russians are doing. A response in the form of concrete actions. There are plenty of statements, but so far there is a shortage of action. The Russians are testing the limits of what is possible. They are checking the reaction, observing how the armed forces of the country act, what they are capable of, and what they are not yet able to do.
And Russia is doing what it does best, blaming everyone around, but never itself.
Poland is in an uproar over a nighttime raid, a grand, simply insane scandal. Allegedly, a group of Russian drones entered the country's airspace. At the same time, there are no images of Russian UAVs or their wreckage. Your authorities still haven't presented any, even though the wreckage has already been found.
But it's so funny how at one moment, Russian propagandists claim there are no photos of the drones and then immediately show them.
Now, this supposed photo of a drone that crashed in Poland has surfaced. No markings on it, apparently a Garand drone. On the tail, you can see a number with the letter I, which isn't used in Russian markings, so it's possible the photo is fake.
Yeah, right, sure. And who else would use such numbering if not Russia? But here's something interesting. Look at this video of Putin's office. And now look at this office? No, they're not the same. These videos were filmed at different times and are not part of a single whole. And finally, take a look at this one too. What if I told you that these videos were not only filmed at different times, but also in different places? Yes, that's right. The Wall Street Journal reports that Putin runs the country from 3 different offices, all of which are completely identical in design, supposedly for his very own personal safety.
Breaking news: Poland is in the crosshairs. Shocking details have emerged. Warsaw is sounding the alarm. This is no accident, but a planned Kremlin operation. Russia has begun testing the defenses of Poland and all of NATO. This strike could lead to something unexpected. It's all true about Russia's attack on Poland, something you definitely didn't expect to hear next.
This is the beginning of World War III. NATO countries have never experienced such an attack before, or is it just a routine provocation? NATO's reactions to Russian drones entering Polish territory on the night of September 10th vary greatly. However, the fact remains. For the first time, Russia has openly attacked a NATO country with strike drones. According to Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, a total of 19 Shahed-type drones entered their territory. Only 4 of them were reportedly shot down. The rest were likely suppressed by Russian electronic warfare systems. It is also known that one of the drones managed to fly about 300 kilometers across Poland. However, the official report states that all targets were destroyed, and this was achieved through the efforts of almost the entire eastern flank of NATO's air forces, including even a radar reconnaissance aircraft.
Polish side emphatically claims that they successfully shot down everything, and yet, for example, large tanker aircraft were also quickly scrambled from various bases in Italy to effectively refuel the fighter jets in Polish airspace that were actively involved in repelling the significant drone attack.
At the same time, the raid did not go unnoticed by civilians. The remains of the downed drone destroyed a residential building, and there were also reports of UAVs crashing right in the middle of the streets. On top of that, thousands of people were unable to depart from Polish airports.
Operations at 4 airports were suspended, including the main hub in Warsaw, Chopin Airport, as well as Warsaw-Modlin, Rzeszów-Jasionka, which is the closest airfield to Ukraine, and Lublin.
But even more shocking than the very fact of the attack on NATO is the reaction that followed, both from alliance members and from Poland itself. Thus, in the country that essentially became the target of an attack by 24 strike drones, this raid was called a provocation, citing the absence of casualties.
Most likely,
we are dealing with a large-scale provocation, but at the same time we are consulting with our allies, and I am in constant contact with the NATO Secretary General. This is the first time that Russian drones have been shot down over the territory of a NATO country, and that is why all our allies are taking this situation very seriously. We have not recorded any casualties, of course. The search for the downed drones is ongoing.
NATO leadership has also expressed deep concern. The Secretary General of the Alliance, Mark Rutte, stated, "The North Atlantic Alliance will defend every inch of its territory. However, a full assessment of the incident is still ongoing." In the United States, where consultations began immediately after the drones crossed the border, they have so far chosen to remain completely silent in public.
Mr. President, what about the Russian drones that entered Polish territory?
Belarus, on the other hand, did not remain silent. Despite the fact that most of the drones entered Poland from there, the local Minister of Defense, with a straight face, declared, "If it weren't for us, Warsaw wouldn't have had time to react at all, so you should actually thank us for warning you."
Through the available channels of communication, from 11 p.m. on September 9th to 4 a.m. on September 10th, our on-duty forces and resources exchanged information about the aerial radar situation with the on-duty forces and resources of Poland and the Republic of Lithuania, thereby notifying them about the approach of unidentified flying objects to their country's territories. This allowed the Polish side to respond promptly to the actions of the drones by scrambling their on-duty forces.
However, the main question arises, what was this all about? According to analysts, with such an attack, the Russian Federation was trying to achieve several objectives at once. First, to show Europe what war is really like and that it is much closer than they think. Second, to test how NATO would respond to a possible incursion, particularly in the Suwałki corridor area.
Accordingly, in this case, it was a measurement of the possible reaction and an assessment from a military consulting perspective. How do the adversaries operate? Especially since Belarus is beginning to study Zapad 2025. And especially since there are Russian troops and the Russian Federation, among other things, has, so to speak, access to Belarusian data. So,
the drone attack on Poland should prompt Europe to be less eager to defend Ukraine's interests in the upcoming negotiations. After all, it is the Europeans today who are resisting the idea of the US and Russia imposing the notion of unconditional concessions on official Kyiv. Moreover, analysts believe that if the plan does not work, it may well be repeated.
It is no coincidence that on the Karelian Peninsula, the Russians are now establishing the corresponding military infrastructure, which will directly threaten a member of the North Atlantic Alliance in Finland. It is also no coincidence that a series of exercises is currently taking place on the territory of Russia and Belarus. Undoubtedly, all these preparations and all these military maneuvers are primarily aimed at practicing certain actions that, in the future, will be directed either against the Baltic states or, once again, against Poland. Therefore, without a doubt, a new round of escalation is indeed taking place.
NATO also recognizes the growing risks, so despite rather sluggish rhetoric, they have nevertheless decided to urgently mobilize Polish reservists and strengthen the air defense in the eastern part of the country.
the European Union has already announced that it has allocated additional funds for Poland to purchase ground-based air defense systems, which are specifically intended to counter the fleet. But we're talking about artillery installations, electronic warfare systems, and so on.
Ukraine, for its part, once again stated that if the aggressor is not pacified, the escalation will continue to grow. Therefore, pressure on Moscow needs to be increased. President Zelensky also promised, if necessary, to help Poland organize a public alert system and to share effective methods for countering Russian drones and missiles.
That's all for now. For more breaking news from the front, tune in to the next episode.